Imagine a time when the world's first national park was almost impossible to reach. For most Americans, Yellowstone existed only as a rumor, a place of towering geysers and boiling mud pots that few had ever seen with their own eyes. The few who made the journey came by train to the edge of the park, then transferred to stagecoaches that rattled over rough wagon trails. The trip took days, and it was dusty, uncomfortable, and expensive. Only the wealthy or the adventurous could even dream of standing before Old Faithful. That all changed because of a road. Not just any road, but a road that cut through the heart of the wilderness, a road that opened the gates of Yellowstone to the world. It was a road that would forever alter the park, for better and for worse, and the story of how it came to be is a story of vision, conflict, and enormous ambition. In the early years after Yellowstone was declared a national park in 1872, it was a place of staggering beauty and equally staggering inaccessibility. The first superintendent, a man named Nathaniel Langford, had no salary, no staff, and almost no budget. He visited the park once a year, and he did not even have a road to travel on. The few trails that existed were little more than game paths used by Native Americans who had known these lands for centuries. But when Congress created the park, they did not imagine the crowds that would one day come. They simply set aside the land, and then they largely forgot about it. For nearly 2 decades, Yellowstone remained wild, untamed, and virtually empty of visitors. Those who did come were explorers, scientists, and the occasional hunter. They rode horses or walked. They carried everything they needed on their backs. There were no hotels, no stores, no ranger stations. There was only the raw, magnificent wilderness. The change began with the railroads. By the 1880s, the Northern Pacific Railway had pushed its tracks to the north entrance of the park, and the Union Pacific reached the west side. Suddenly, it was possible for ordinary people to travel by train to the edge of Yellowstone. But once they arrived, they were still stuck. The stagecoach companies charged high fares for bumpy rides over rutted dirt tracks that turned into rivers of mud every time it rained. The coaches were open to the elements, and passengers arrived at the park's few lodges covered in dust and exhausted. Still, the number of visitors grew. In 1890, more than 5,000 people came to Yellowstone. By 1900, that number had climbed to over 20,000. The park needed better infrastructure, but the government was slow to act. Army had taken over management of the park in 1886, and the soldiers did their best to maintain the existing trails, but they had no budget for major construction. The park was still largely a wilderness, and the road system was a patchwork of routes that barely served the growing demand. Then came the automobile. The first cars rumbled into Yellowstone in the early 1900s, and they caused a sensation. The park superintendent at the time, a man named John Pitcher, was not a fan. He saw automobiles as noisy, dangerous machines that would scare the wildlife and tear up the roads. He tried to keep them out, but the public was enchanted by the idea of touring Yellowstone in their own car, free from the schedules and costs of stagecoaches. The stagecoach companies, of course, fought back. They had a monopoly on transportation inside the park, and they did not want to lose it. The battle over automobiles in Yellowstone became a national argument. Newspapers ran editorials. Politicians debated. President Theodore Roosevelt, a passionate conservationist, had his own views. He loved the wilderness, but he also loved the idea of making it accessible to everyday Americans. He was a man of action, and he decided that Yellowstone needed a proper road system, a network of modern highways that would allow cars to travel safely through the park. He put the Army in charge of the project, and he selected an engineer who would become the father of Yellowstone's roads. That engineer was Captain Hiram M. Chittenden of the Army Corps of Engineers. He arrived at Yellowstone in 1903, and he was appalled by what he found. The roads were little more than cow paths, steep and narrow, with sharp turns that were impossible for automobiles to negotiate. The bridges were made of logs and were rotting. The grades were so steep that a car could barely climb them, and the descents were terrifying. Chittenden was a man of vision. He was also a historian who had studied the park's natural features and its early exploration. He understood that Yellowstone was not just a beautiful place. It was a fragile place, with delicate thermal features that could be destroyed by careless construction. He knew that any road he built had to respect the land, but he also knew that the park would never survive if it remained impossible to visit. The only way to protect Yellowstone was to share it, and the only way to share it was to build a road that would let people in. Chittenden's plan was bold. He proposed a grand loop road that would circle the park, connecting all the major attractions. It would be wide enough for 2 cars to pass, and it would have gentle grades and smooth surfaces. It would be built with crushed stone and gravel, packed tight so that rain would not wash it away. It would have proper bridges, not the shaky log crossings that were always in danger of collapsing. It would be a road that would last for decades. The cost was enormous, more than $1 million, an unheard of sum in those days. The politicians in Washington balked. They had never spent that much money on a road in a national park. But Chittenden was a persuasive man. He argued that the road would pay for itself in tourism dollars. He argued that it was essential for the park's management, for the army to be able to patrol the vast wilderness. And he argued that it was a matter of national pride. America had the world's first national park, and it should have the world's finest park road. The construction began in 1903. Chittenden's first major project was the road from the north entrance at Gardiner, Montana, up to Mammoth Hot Springs. That stretch was relatively easy. The real challenge came when he tried to push the road over the high passes and through the thick forests. He had to blast through solid rock. He had to build retaining walls on steep mountainsides. He had to drain swamps and fill in bogs. The workers were mostly army soldiers, and local laborers paid 60 cents a day. They used picks and shovels, horse-drawn wagons, and dynamite. There were no bulldozers, no dump trucks, no power tools. Every foot of road was carved by hand. It was brutal, dangerous work. Men were killed in rock slides. Others were injured by falling trees, but Chittenden drove them hard. He was a perfectionist. He inspected every mile of road, and if a curve was too sharp or a grade too steep, he ordered it rebuilt. He insisted on quality. He wanted a road that would not just serve the park for a few years, but for a generation or more. The most famous part of Chittenden's road was the stretch over the Continental Divide, near the present-day west thumb of Yellowstone Lake. The terrain there was a nightmare. The ground was soft, volcanic soil that turned to mud in the spring. The winters were long and harsh, and the road had to be built in short summer seasons. Chittenden decided to build a series of switchbacks up the side of a steep hill, a design that is still in use today. The road climbed more than 1,000 feet in just a few miles. It required huge cuts into the hillside and enormous fills across ravines. The workers called it the Golden Gate because it was so expensive. It cost nearly $200,000 to build just that one section. But when it was finished, it was a marvel of engineering. Cars could climb it without overheating. Horses could pull wagons up it without straining. It was wide enough for vehicles to pass each other safely. And the view from the top was stunning, a panorama of Yellowstone Lake and the distant mountains. Chittenden's work did not stop with the road itself. He also built the first automobile bridges in the park. The most famous was the bridge over the Yellowstone River, near the present-day site of the Canyon Village area. That bridge was a steel truss structure, strong enough to carry the heaviest vehicles. It replaced a rickety wooden bridge that had been washed out by spring floods almost every year. Chittenden built it high above the river, on stone piers that anchored deep into the bedrock. He expected it to last for 100 years, and he was right. The bridge still stands today, although it is now used only for foot traffic. It is a monument to his skill and his foresight, but not everyone was happy with Chittenden's road. The stagecoach companies saw it as a threat. They had lobbied hard to keep automobiles out of the park, and now the government was building roads that would make cars the dominant form of travel. The stagecoach men argued that the roads were ruining the wilderness experience. They said that automobiles would scare away the wildlife and ruin the peace and quiet. They had a point. The first cars were loud, smelly, and unreliable. They broke down frequently, and they left clouds of dust in their wake. The stagecoach companies also argued that the road was too expensive, that the government was wasting taxpayer money on a luxury for the wealthy, because only rich people could afford automobiles. But the truth was that the stagecoach fares were also high, and the rides were miserable. The public wanted cars, and the park officials knew that if they did not accommodate cars, Yellowstone would lose visitors to other attractions. Chittenden himself was not blind to the potential drawbacks of his road. He wrote in his reports that the road would bring many people to Yellowstone, but it would also bring the problems of civilization. He worried about overcrowding, about pollution, about the damage that thousands of visitors would do to the fragile thermal features. He recommended that the park limit the number of cars allowed in at any one time, and that visitors be required to follow strict rules. He also argued that the park should preserve large areas of wilderness where no roads would ever be built. He wanted a balanced approach, a way to let people see the park without destroying it. But he knew that once the road was built, there was no going back. The road would change Yellowstone forever, and he could only hope that the change would be for the better. By the time Chittenden finished his work in 1905, he had built more than 150 miles of road. He had transformed Yellowstone from a remote wilderness into a place that anyone could visit by car. The stagecoaches soon disappeared. Automobile travel exploded. In 1910, more than 40,000 people visited the park. By 1920, that number had doubled. The road became the spine of Yellowstone, the route that every visitor followed. It allowed people to see the geysers, the waterfalls, the canyons, and the wildlife, all in a single trip that could be done in a week or less. The road made Yellowstone accessible, but it also made it crowded. The once solitary wilderness became a destination, a place where people from all over the world came to experience the wonders of nature from the comfort of their cars. But the road also brought new threats. With more visitors came more development. Hotels, gas stations, and souvenir shops sprang up along the route. The Park Service, which took over from the Army in 1916, had to manage growing traffic jams, pollution, and the impact on wildlife. The road itself caused erosion and sedimentation in the rivers. It disturbed the natural landscape. Some people began to question whether the road had been a mistake. They argued that the park should have remained a wilderness, accessible only to those willing to walk or ride a horse. They pointed to the damage that the road had caused, and they worried that the park was becoming a theme park, a place where the experience of nature was replaced by the experience of a road trip. Yet the road also did something else. It gave people a reason to care about Yellowstone. Before the road, the park was an abstraction for most Americans. It was a place on a map, a story in a magazine. After the road, it was a place they could go. They could pack their families into the car and drive for days, sleeping in tents or in the park's lodges, and they could see for themselves the geysers and the bears and the vast, open landscapes. Those experiences turned visitors into advocates. They wrote letters to their congressmen. They donated money to conservation causes. They taught their children to love and respect the wilderness. The road created a constituency for Yellowstone, a huge population of people who felt a personal connection to the park. Without that constituency, it is possible that Yellowstone would have been lost to industrial development, mining, or logging. The road helped save the park, even as it changed it. Today, Chittenden's Road is still the main artery of Yellowstone. It has been paved and widened and improved, but the basic route remains the same. It is one of the most famous scenic drives in the world, and it is still the way that most visitors experience the park. The road that changed Yellowstone forever is now part of the park's identity. It is a symbol of the tension between accessibility and preservation, between letting people in and keeping the wilderness wild. Chittenden understood that tension. He built the road anyway because he believed that the park could not survive in isolation. He believed that people had to see it to love it, and they had to love it to protect it. He was right, but he was also wrong. The road opened the door to millions of visitors, and each one of them leaves a mark, however small, on the fragile landscape. The road is a gift and a burden. It is the reason why Yellowstone is one of the most visited national parks in America, and it is the reason why the park struggles to balance the needs of people with the needs of nature. As we drive that road today, we are following in the footsteps of Captain Chittenden. We are traveling on a route that was carved by hand, with dynamite and sweat, through some of the most beautiful and challenging terrain on Earth. We are beneficiaries of his vision, and we are also inheritors of his dilemma. The road that changed Yellowstone forever still asks us the same question it asked him. How do we share this place without destroying it? There is no easy answer, but the road itself is a story, and that story is worth telling. It is a story of ambition and compromise, of progress and loss. It is a story that begins with a man who believed that a road could save a wilderness, and it continues with every visitor who drives that road today, looking for a glimpse of something wild. The road that Chittenden built did not simply end at the park boundaries. It reached out like a hand, pulling the rest of America toward Yellowstone. In the years that followed, the automobile became more than a luxury. It became a necessity of the American dream. Families saved for months to buy a car, and then they pointed it west, toward the geysers and the bears. The road was the magnet, and the cars were the filings that traced its lines. By the 2020s, the National Park Service had taken over from the Army, and the new agency faced a challenge that Chittenden had only glimpsed. The road was no longer just a road. It was a promise. It was a promise that anyone, regardless of wealth or station, could stand on the rim of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone and feel the spray of the lower falls on their face. It was a promise that the wilderness was not lost, but waiting. But promises have costs. The road brought crowds, and crowds brought wear. The gravel surface that Chittenden had laid so carefully began to show ruts and washouts. The summer traffic was relentless, cars and trucks and buses, all grinding the road down. The Park Service had to resurface sections every year, and they experimented with new materials. They tried oil and tar, then asphalt, then concrete. The road grew harder and smoother, and as it grew smoother, the cars went faster. The speed limit was raised from 15 miles per hour to 20, then 25, then 35. The slower pace that Chittenden had envisioned, a pace that allowed people to see the details of the landscape, gave way to a blur of motion. The park became a series of postcards glimpsed through a windshield. The road also changed the way people thought about time. Before the road, a visit to Yellowstone was a month-long expedition. You came by train, then by horse, then by foot. You stayed for weeks, maybe months. You lived in canvas tents or log cabins. You cooked over campfires. You learned the rhythms of the park, the morning mist over the river, the midday silence of the lodgepole pines, the evening chorus of coyotes. The road compressed all of that into a week, then a weekend, then a single day. The park became something you could do like a checklist. See Old Faithful, check. See the Grand Canyon, check. See a bear, check. The road made Yellowstone efficient, but efficiency is not the same as experience. Chittenden had hoped that his road would allow people to appreciate the park without destroying it. He had argued for strict rules, speed limits, designated parking areas, limits on the number of cars. But the Park Service, under pressure from the automobile industry and from a public that wanted unrestricted access, relaxed those rules. By the 1930s, the park was flooded with cars. The roadsides became campgrounds. People parked wherever they could find a flat spot, and they left behind trash, trampled vegetation, and the smell of gasoline. The thermal features began to suffer. Tourists threw rocks into the hot springs to see them bubble. They walked on the fragile crust of the geyser basins, leaving footprints that would take years to heal. They fed the bears, and the bears learned to beg, and the bears became dangerous. The Park Service responded with more rules, but the rules were hard to enforce. The road was too long, and the rangers were too few. In the 1940s and 1950s, the park built more facilities, visitor centers, gas stations, motels. The road became a ribbon of development. The pullouts filled with cars, and the traffic jams became legendary. On summer weekends, the road from Old Faithful to Madison Junction could take hours. The Park Service tried to build bypasses, but every new road just brought more cars. It was a cycle that Chittenden had foreseen, but he had not known how to stop it. He had written that the road would be a two-edged sword, and he was right. Yet even as the road brought problems, it also brought solutions. The people who came to Yellowstone in their cars were not just tourists, they were voters. They wrote letters to Congress demanding that the park be protected. They formed organizations like the National Parks Conservation Association. They pushed for the Wilderness Act of 1964, which set aside large areas of the park where no roads would ever be built. The road that Chittenden built made those people care, and their caring made Yellowstone stronger. The park was not just a place for the rich or the adventurous. It was a place for everyone, and the road was the equalizer. In the 1960s, the Park Service launched Mission 66, a massive program to upgrade facilities across the national park system. Yellowstone got new visitor centers, new campgrounds, and new roads. The old gravel roads were paved. The narrow bridges were widened. The hairpin turns were straightened. The road became faster and safer, but it also became more anonymous. You could drive from the west entrance to Old Faithful without ever seeing a bear or a bison. The wildlife had learned to avoid the road because the road meant noise and danger. The road that was supposed to bring people closer to nature had actually pushed nature away, but not all the wildlife fled. The bears, in particular, learned that the road meant food. They came to the pullouts and the campgrounds, and they begged for handouts. The Park Service tried to stop people from feeding them, but the habit was hard to break. By the 1970s, the bear problem had become a crisis. Hundreds of bears were collared and relocated. Dozens were killed. The Park Service closed the garbage dumps that had become feeding grounds, and the bears were forced to return to the wild. The road had made them dependent, and now the road had to make them independent again. It was a painful lesson, and it taught the Park Service that the road was not just a tool for access. It was a force that reshaped the entire ecosystem. The road also reshaped the economy of the region. The towns around Yellowstone, West Yellowstone, Gardiner, Cook City, Jackson, grew from small outposts into bustling tourist centers. They depended on the road to bring visitors, and they competed for the traffic. Gas stations, motels, restaurants, and souvenir shops lined the highways. The road became a commercial corridor, and the park's entrance fees could not keep up with the demand. The Park Service had to raise fees, and the cost of visiting Yellowstone began to climb. The road had made the park accessible, but it had also made it a commodity, and still the road drew people. In the 1980s, the number of visitors passed 3 million per year. In the 1990s, it passed 4 million. The road was no longer just a road. It was a symbol of freedom, of adventure, of the American love affair with the automobile. People came from all over the world to drive the Grand Loop, to see the bison jams, to photograph the geysers. The road was the star of the park, the thing that everyone remembered. It was a two-lane blacktop that curved through valleys and climbed over mountains, and it was as much a part of Yellowstone as Old Faithful. But the road had a dark side. The traffic jams that Chittenden had worried about became a daily reality. In July and August, the road from Norris Junction to Canyon Village could be a parking lot. The exhaust from idling cars polluted the air. The noise drowned out the sounds of the park. The road was a scar on the landscape, a slash of asphalt that cut through some of the most pristine wilderness on Earth. Environmental groups began to call for change. They wanted to restrict cars, to build a shuttle system, to remove sections of the road and restore the land. They argued that the road had been a mistake, that Chittenden had been wrong, that the park should be preserved for quiet enjoyment, not for the roar of engines. But the advocates of the road pushed back. They said that restricting cars would make Yellowstone a place for the elite, the wealthy who could afford to hike or ride horses. They said that the road was essential for accessibility, for the elderly, the disabled, the families with young children. They said that the road was democracy itself, and that closing it would be a betrayal of the park's mission. The debate raged for decades, and it still continues today. The road is a flashpoint, a symbol of the conflict between preservation and access. Chittenden, if he could see Yellowstone today, would be both proud and sad. He would see the crowds and the congestion and the noise, and he would wonder if he had done the right thing. But he would also see the children who see their first bison from the window of a car, the families who pitch a tent in a campground and listen to the wolves at night, the millions of people who have fallen in love with Yellowstone because the road allowed them to find it. He would see the road as a gift, imperfect and flawed, but still a gift, and he would recognize that the road itself has become a part of the park's story. It is not separate from the geysers and the bears and the canyons. It is part of the landscape, a human addition to a natural world. The road is a reminder that Yellowstone is not a pristine wilderness. It never was. The indigenous people who lived there for thousands of years had their own trails and campsites. The early explorers had their own routes. The road is just the latest layer, the newest chapter in a long history of human interaction with the land. And like every chapter, it has its heroes and its villains, its triumphs and its failures. Chittenden was a hero, but he was also a man of his time. He believed in progress, in the power of technology to improve the human condition. He believed that the road would bring enlightenment, that people would learn to love the wilderness by driving through it. He was not entirely wrong, but he underestimated the power of the road to change the wilderness, to alter the very thing that people came to see. He built a road that allowed people to see Yellowstone, but he also built a road that changed Yellowstone. The two are inseparable. Today, the Park Service is working to mitigate the road's impact. They have installed wildlife crossings, bridges and tunnels that allow animals to cross the road safely. They have reduced speed limits in critical areas. They have experimented with shuttle buses, especially in the busiest parts of the park. They have closed some sections of the road during certain times of the year to protect wildlife. They are trying to find a balance, to keep the road open without letting the road destroy what it was built to reveal. But the road is not going anywhere. It is too deeply embedded in the park's infrastructure, in the economy of the region, in the expectations of the public. The road that Chittenden built is now part of the American identity. It is the road that every family dreams of driving, the road that leads to adventure and wonder. It is the road that changes people, that turns tourists into conservationists, that makes strangers fall in love with a place they had only seen in photographs. And so the road continues. It carries the weight of millions of tires, thousands of stories, hundreds of dreams. It winds through the forests and the valleys, past the geysers and the bears, over the rivers and the mountains. It is a road that was built with dynamite and sweat, with stone and steel, with vision and hope. It is a road that will never be finished because the story of Yellowstone is never finished. Every visitor adds a new layer, a new memory, a new hope. The road that changed Yellowstone forever is still changing it every day with every mile. There are moments when the road seems to vanish. At dawn, when the mist rises from the Firehole River and the only sound is the steam from the geysers, the road is just a dark ribbon in a sea of green. The cars are still parked, the engines are cold, and the park belongs to the animals. A bison walks across the asphalt, unconcerned. A coyote trots along the edge. The road is a part of their world, too, an obstacle to cross, a corridor to follow, a place where the human and the wild meet. And that is the heart of the story. Chittenden did not just build a road. He built a meeting place, a space where two worlds could come together. He built a road that would allow people to see the wild, and he built a road that would let the wild touch people. The road changed Yellowstone forever, but it also changed the people who traveled it. It made them care. It made them protect. It made them understand that wilderness is not a place you visit. It is a place you carry with you, even after you have driven home. As the sun rises over Yellowstone Lake, the first cars begin to move. The road hums with life. The journey continues. And the road that Chittenden built, the road that changed everything, is still there, waiting for the next traveler, the next story, the next chance to share the wonder of a place that cannot be captured in any photograph, any book, any film. It can only be experienced 1 mile at a time, one turn of the wheel, one breath of the crisp mountain air. The road is not just a road. It is a window into the soul of Yellowstone, and it is a mirror of our own hopes and fears. It shows us what we love and what we lose. It shows us that every choice has consequences, and that the best choices are the ones that leave room for wonder, for surprise, for the unexpected. Chittenden knew that. He knew that the road would not solve every problem. He knew that it would create new problems, new challenges, new questions. But he also knew that the road was necessary, that without it, Yellowstone would be lost to the world, hidden away, forgot. He built the road because he believed that the park could only be saved if it was seen. He was right, and he was wrong, and both are true. The road that changed Yellowstone forever is still changing it. The story is not over. Every summer, new visitors drive that road. They bring their cameras, their children, their hopes. They leave behind tire tracks, footprints, and memories. They take away photographs, souvenirs, and a piece of the park in their hearts. The road is a cycle, a giving and a taking, a loss and a gain. It is the story of America's relationship with the natural world, a story that is still being written 1 mile at a time. And as the road stretches ahead, curving around a bend, disappearing into the trees, it invites us to follow. It invites us to see for ourselves what Chittenden saw, what he hoped for, what he feared. It invites us to become part of the story, to add our own chapter to the history of a road that changed Yellowstone forever. The road is open. The key is in the ignition. The geysers are waiting. And so the journey begins again. For every traveler who points their car toward Yellowstone, the road is a promise. It is a line on a map, a ribbon of possibility that stretches from the interstate through the gateway towns, past the motels and the souvenir shops, into the mountains and the forests and the valleys where the wild things are. The road is the gateway to a world that seems separate from the ordinary, a world where time moves differently, where the air smells of pine and sulfur and wet earth, where the horizon is a jagged line of peaks and the sky is a dome of blue so deep it feels like a painting. But the road is also a barrier. It is a seam in the landscape, a line that divides the wild into two halves. For the animals that live in Yellowstone, the road is an obstacle to be crossed, a danger to be navigated, a foreign element in their ancient home. The bison that walk across the asphalt do so with a kind of indifference, as if the road is just another river to ford, another patch of ground to cover. But the road is not a river. It is a river of steel and rubber, a river that moves with a speed and a purpose that the animals cannot understand. And so there are collisions, there are deaths, there are families of elk that lose a member to a speeding car, bears that are struck in the dark of night, wolves that are killed as they follow the road's edge in search of an easy meal. The Park Service has tried to reduce these collisions. They have built underpasses and overpasses, concrete bridges that are camouflaged with dirt and rocks and native vegetation. They have installed fences that funnel animals toward these crossings, guiding them away from the road. The results have been remarkable. In some areas, animal-vehicle collisions have dropped by more than 80%. The crossings work, but they are expensive and they are still rare. The vast majority of Yellowstone's roads are unprotected, and the animals must take their chances. There is a story that rangers tell, a story that has become part of the park's mythology. It is about a young grizzly bear, a 2-year-old male, who was hit by a car on the road between Madison and Norris. The bear survived, but he was badly injured. His leg was broken, his ribs cracked, and he was in shock. The rangers loaded him into a trailer and drove him to a veterinary hospital in Montana. They worked for hours to save him. They pinned his leg, set his bones, wrapped him in blankets. And when he was stable, they drove him back to Yellowstone, to the same stretch of road where he had been hit. They opened the trailer door and the bear stepped out. He looked around, sniffed the air, and then walked into the forest. He never came back to the road. The rangers like to think that he learned his lesson, that he understood that the road was dangerous. But they know that is not true. The bear survived by luck, not by wisdom. And there are hundreds of other bears, thousands of other animals that do not have that luck. The road is a teacher, but it teaches different lessons to different creatures. To the animals, it teaches fear. To the humans, it teaches wonder. But sometimes the two lessons collide. There are moments on the road when the wonder and the fear become one. It happens when a driver rounds a curve and sees a grizzly bear standing in the middle of the asphalt, looking directly at the car. It happens when a family stops to watch a herd of bison cross the road, and the animals move slowly, deliberately, their huge heads swinging, their eyes dark and ancient. In those moments, the road becomes a stage, a place where the wild and the human share the same space. The driver is no longer a tourist, he is a witness, and the bear is no longer a symbol. She is a creature of flesh and blood, a creature that could kill him if she chose, but she does not. She just looks and then she turns and walks into the trees, and the road is empty again. These encounters are the heart of Yellowstone. They are why people come. They are why the road was built. But they are also why the road is a problem. Because the more people come, the more encounters there are. The more encounters there are, the more pressure there is on the animals. The more pressure on the animals, the less wild they become. There is a term for this. Biologists call it habituation. It is the process by which wild animals lose their fear of humans. And when they lose their fear, they become dangerous. Not just to humans, but to themselves. A bear that is habituated to humans is a bear that will be killed. A wolf that is habituated to humans is a wolf that will be removed. The road is a pipeline of habituation, bringing people and animals into contact over and over again until the boundary between the wild and the tame begins to blur. Chittenden did not think about habituation. He did not think about the long-term effects of letting millions of people drive through a wilderness. He thought about the moment. He thought about the experience. He thought about the wonder. And in that, he was like all of us. We want the wonder. We want the encounter. We want to see the bear, the bison, the wolf. We do not want to think about the consequences. We do not want to think about the bear that will be killed because it learned to beg for food from cars. We do not want to think about the wolf that was shot because it left the park and killed a rancher's sheep. We want the road to be a simple thing, a line on a map, a path to joy. But it is not simple. It is a tangle of trade-offs and compromises, a web of causes and effects that stretches beyond the horizon. The road has also changed the land itself. It has altered the flow of water, the movement of sediment, the distribution of plants. In some places, the road acts as a dam, diverting runoff and changing the shape of streams. In others, it acts as a corridor, allowing invasive species to spread. The road is not passive, it is active. It shapes the environment around it, creating new habitats and destroying old ones. The road cuts through meadows and forests, through wetlands and thermal areas. It is a scar, but it is also a garden. Along the edges of the road, the vegetation is different. There are more weeds, more grasses, more species that thrive on disturbance. There are also more wildflowers because the road allows light to reach the ground and because the exhaust from cars provides nitrogen. The road is a strange kind of ecology, a human-made environment that supports its own community of life. And then there are the people. The road has changed the people who travel it, just as it has changed the land and the animals. There is a phenomenon that sociologists call the Yellowstone effect. It is the transformation that occurs when a person drives into the park for the first time. They come as tourists, with cameras and guidebooks and a list of things to see. They leave as something else. They leave with a sense of connection, a feeling that they belong to something larger than themselves. They leave with a commitment, a promise to return, to protect, to preserve. The Yellowstone effect is real. It has been measured in surveys and interviews. People who visit Yellowstone are more likely to support conservation, to donate to environmental causes, to vote for politicians who protect public lands. The road is the engine of that effect. It brings people in, allows them to see the wonders, and sends them out as advocates. But the Yellowstone effect has a shadow side. The more people who are transformed by the park, the more people want to visit. The more people who visit, the more crowded the park becomes. The more crowded the park becomes, the harder it is to have the kind of experience that transforms people. There is a paradox at the heart of Yellowstone. The road that was built to share the wonder is now threatening the wonder itself. The crowds are so thick in the summer that traffic jams can stretch for miles. The parking lots fill up by mid-morning. The boardwalks around Old Faithful are packed with people taking selfies. The quiet, the solitude, the sense of adventure, these are becoming rare. And when they disappear, the Yellowstone effect begins to fade. A person who visits a crowded, noisy, congested park is not the same as a person who visits a wild, quiet, open one. The transformation is diluted. The magic is lost. Chittenden could not have imagined this. He could not have imagined that his road would become a victim of its own success. He built it for a few thousand visitors a year, not for 4 million. He built it for horse-drawn carriages and early automobiles, not for RVs and tour buses. He built it for a world that no longer exists, and yet the road endures. It is the same road in the same place, carrying more people than he ever dreamed possible. And the park is still there, still wild, still beautiful. But it is changing. It is changing because of the road and because of the people it brings. And the question that haunts the Park Service is whether the change can be managed, whether the road can be controlled, or whether it will, in time, transform the park into something that is no longer Yellowstone. There are those who believe that the road must be closed, at least in part. They argue for a system of shuttles and buses, with the road itself restricted to emergency and maintenance vehicles. They point to other national parks like Zion and Yosemite, where mandatory shuttle systems have reduced congestion and restored a sense of peace. They say that Yellowstone should follow their example, but the road in Yellowstone is different. It is not just a road. It is an artery that connects the park to the surrounding communities, to the towns of West Yellowstone and Gardner and Cook City. It is an economic lifeline. Without the road, those towns would wither. Without the road, the park would become a fortress, accessible only to the rich and the fit. The road is not just for the tourist with a camera. It is for the family that saved for years to drive across the country. It is for the elderly couple who can no longer hike but can still roll down the window and feel the wind. It is for the disabled veteran who dreams of seeing a bear. The road is for everyone. And to close, it would be to close the door to the very people that the park was created to serve. So the road remains. And the Park Service continues to search for a middle way, a path that preserves the road's benefits while minimizing its harms. They have experimented with timed entry systems, with reservation requirements, with increased law enforcement. They have tried to spread the crowds by promoting less visited areas, by encouraging people to come in the spring and fall, by offering programs that draw visitors away from the most popular spots. The results are mixed. The crowds keep coming. The traffic keeps growing. The road keeps carrying its burden, and yet there are still moments when the road reveals its true nature. Late at night, when the park is empty and the stars are out, the road is a different place. It is quiet. It is still. The asphalt glows faintly in the moonlight, a pale ribbon winding through the dark. A coyote crosses the road, its eyes green in the beam of a ranger's flashlight. An owl calls from a pine tree. The geysers are steaming, invisible in the dark, but their sound carries, a deep grumble that seems to come from the earth itself. In those moments, the road is not a scar. It is a path, a way through the darkness, a connection between the human and the wild. It is a place where the boundaries dissolve, where the road becomes part of the night, part of the wilderness, part of the story. The road is also a place of memory. Every mile has its stories, its moments of joy and sorrow and surprise. There is the story of the family from Ohio who drove all the way to Yellowstone only to have their car break down near the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. They spent the night in the car, listening to the river below and watching the stars above. They thought it was the worst trip of their lives, but years later they remembered it as the best because the breakdown forced them to stop, to be still, to listen. There is the story of the photographer who spent a whole day waiting at a bend in the road near Lamar Valley, hoping to capture a shot of a wolf. He sat in his car, camera ready, for 8 hours. And just as the light was fading, a wolf appeared, a gray shadow moving through the tall grass. He took one picture. It became the most famous photograph of a wolf in Yellowstone, and it was made possible by the road, which brought him to that exact spot at that exact moment. There is the story of the bison. In the winter of 1997, a bison calf was found alone on the road near the north entrance. Its mother had been hit by a car and killed. The calf was barely a day old, shivering in the snow. A ranger found it and brought it to a ranch where it was bottle-fed and raised by humans. But the calf never forgot the road. As it grew, it would stand at the fence, looking toward the road, as if waiting for its mother to return. The calf was eventually released into a herd in Montana, but it never thrived. It was always a little wild, a little sad, a little lost. The road had taken its mother, and the road had given it a second chance, but the road could not give it back what it had taken. These stories are the road's legacy. They are not in any history book. They are not part of any official narrative. They are the stories that people carry with them, the memories that shape their understanding of the park, the moments that make Yellowstone a place of mystery and meaning. The road is the setting for these stories, the stage on which they unfold, and as long as the road exists, the stories will continue. They will be told around campfires and in living rooms, in blogs and in books. They will be passed from generation to generation, each telling adding a new layer, a new interpretation, a new truth. So the road is not just a physical structure. It is a vessel for story. It carries the narratives of millions of people, each one unique, each one a thread in the tapestry of Yellowstone. And the road itself has its own story, a story that began with Chittenden's vision and continues today, every time a tire touches the asphalt. The road is an actor in the drama of Yellowstone, a character with its own arc, its own conflicts, its own triumphs and failures. It is the antagonist that brings congestion and pollution. It is the protagonist that brings wonder and discovery. It is both and it is neither. It is simply the road, and the road is aging. It is 80 years old in many sections, and it shows its age. The asphalt is cracked, the shoulders are eroding, the bridges are rusting. The Park Service spends millions of dollars each year just to keep the road open, but the funding is never enough. The road is a constant maintenance challenge, an endless cycle of repair and replacement. And every time a section is rebuilt, there is a debate about whether it should be made wider, straighter, safer. The conservationists argue for narrowing the road, for adding speed bumps, for making it less friendly to cars. The drivers argue for widening it, for adding pullouts, for making it easier to traverse. The road is a battlefield, fought over by competing visions of what Yellowstone should be. Somewhere in the middle of these debates, the road continues. It does not care. It does not argue. It just lies there, patient and indifferent, carrying whatever is placed upon it. The road is a witness. It has seen the bison and the bears, the cars and the campers, the rangers and the tourists. It has seen the families laughing and the children crying. It has seen the sun rise and the moon set. It has seen the snow and the rain and the wind. It has seen everything that Yellowstone has to offer, and it has kept silent. But the road is not silent forever. Every mile has a hum, a vibration, a sound that is unique to that stretch of asphalt. The hum changes with the speed of the tires, the weight of the vehicle, the temperature of the pavement. It is a song that only the road can sing, a song that is played over and over, never quite the same, never quite different. It is the song of the road itself, a song that has been playing for more than a century and will continue to play for as long as the road exists. And as we drive that road, we become part of the song. Our tires add their own note. Our engine adds its own rhythm. Our voices add their own melody. The road is a symphony, and we are the musicians. We are playing the road, and the road is playing us. It is a duet, a dance, a collaboration. And when we stop, when we park and get out and walk into the meadow, the song continues. It is still there in the pavement, in the air, in our memory. The road does not stop when we do. It is always playing, always waiting for the next traveler to join the chorus. So drive the road that Chittenden built. Drive it with the windows down, with the smell of pine and dust and exhaust filling your lungs. Drive it slowly, stopping often, letting the animals cross, letting the wonder soak in. Drive it with your children in the back seat, their faces pressed to the glass, their eyes wide with amazement. Drive it with your parents who remember a time when the road was quieter and the crowds were smaller. Drive it alone with your thoughts, with your memories, with your hopes. Drive it and become part of its story, because the road is not just a road. It is a journey, and every journey begins with a single turn of the wheel. The key is in the ignition. The geysers are waiting. The road stretches ahead, curving around a bend, disappearing into the trees. There is no final destination. The destination is the drive itself. The road is the reason. The road is the reward. And as the miles unwind and the hours pass and the sun arcs across the sky, the road will change you. It will change you forever, just as it changed Yellowstone, just as it changes everyone who travels it. And that is the truth. The road is a changemaker. It is a force that reshapes the land, the animals, the people, the stories. It is a living thing, a creature of concrete and stone, a creature that grows and adapts and endures. It is a monument to human ambition and a testament to human humility. It is a place where we confront our limits and our possibilities. It is a mirror in which we see ourselves, our dreams, our fears, our hopes. So drive the road that changed Yellowstone forever, and let the road change you. And that change is not always comfortable. Sometimes it is slow, almost imperceptible, like the gradual wearing of the road itself. But it is real. You might not notice it as you drive, as you focus on the next curve, the next animal sighting, the next decision of where to pull over. But later, back home, you will catch yourself staring out the window, remembering the way the light fell through the pines. You will smell pine needles in the grocery store and be transported. You will hear a car rumble and think of the Grand Loop. The road does not leave you. It embeds itself in your senses, in your memory, in your very being. Take winter, for instance. The road that Chittenden built is a summer road primarily, but it has a second life in the snow. When the first blizzard sweeps across the park, usually in late October, the road closes to cars. It becomes a white ribbon, a ghost of itself. The only traffic is from snowmobiles and snow coaches, the rumbling machines that carry visitors through a landscape so altered it seems like another world. The road is buried under several feet of snow, its guardrails half hidden, its curves softened into smooth white slopes. The only way you know you are on a road is the lines of posts marking the edges, the occasional sign poking up like a drowned marker. And there is a special breed of ranger who works the winter road. They are the ones who drive the plows, the ones who clear the snow from the Lamar Valley and the high passes. They work in sub-zero temperatures, in winds that can make the wind chill drop to -60. They know every crack in the pavement even though they cannot see it. They know where the drifts form, where the ice is slickest, where the bison like to stand. They have a relationship with the road that no summer visitor can understand. For them, the road is a living thing, a creature that changes with the weather, that breathes, that fights back. One such ranger, a woman named Ellen, spent 20 winters on the road. She used to say that the road talks to you in the winter. She meant it literally. When the temperature drops below zero, the pavement contracts and makes a cracking sound. It is a sharp, almost musical pop that echoes through the silence. Ellen learned to read those sounds. A certain frequency meant the road was safe. A certain pitch meant a crack was forming, a weak spot that would need repair come spring. She could drive with her eyes closed, listening to the road, knowing where she was by the hum of the tires and the rhythm of the pops. She said the road was like an old friend who speaks in code. But the road is not always friendly. In winter, it can be treacherous. There is the story of a snowcoach driver named Frank who got caught in a whiteout near the Continental Divide. The wind was so strong it lifted the snow off the ground and filled the air with nothing but white. Frank could not see the road, could not see the posts, could not see anything. He stopped the snowcoach and waited. He waited for 6 hours, the engine running, the heat barely keeping the cold at bay. And in that time, he thought about the road. He thought about all the people who had driven it, all the stories it held. He thought about Chittenden, about the horses and the wagons, about the first cars. He thought about how the road was the only thing connecting him to the world, a thread of asphalt buried under feet of snow. When the whiteout lifted, he saw that he had stopped exactly 1 foot from a cliff. The road had held him, cradled him, saved him. He never drove that stretch again without saying a quiet thank you. And there is the road in spring, when the snow begins to melt and the road emerges like a resurrection. The Park Service works around the clock to clear the snow, to repair the damage, to open the road by mid-April. It is a race against time, against the thaw, against the mud. The road is vulnerable then, soft and yielding. It has to be handled with care. The plow drivers take it slow, scraping layer by layer, not wanting to gouge the pavement. And as they work, the animals return. The bison come first, walking across the slush. Then the bears, emerging from hibernation, sniffing the air. The road becomes a corridor for life, a path that connects the winter world to the summer world. That cycle of closure and reopening is a kind of death and rebirth. The road dies each fall, buried in snow, forgotten, and it is born again each spring, scraped clean, gleaming in the sun. It is a ritual that has been repeated for over 100 years. The road is always dying and always being reborn, and the people who love it, who drive it, who work on it, they participate in that cycle. They become part of the road's life. And so the road is not just a static object, it is a process. It is a story that unfolds in the present tense, every moment a new chapter. When you drive it, you are not just a reader of that story. You are a writer. Every decision you make, every turn you take, every time you slow down for an animal, you are adding a sentence, a paragraph, a page. The road is being written by the millions of tires that cross it, by the footsteps of rangers, by the hooves of bison, by the paws of wolves. It is a palimpsest, a manuscript that is constantly being erased and rewritten. And what about the future? What will the road become? There are already plans to widen sections, to add more pullouts to improve safety. There are also proposals to pull up the road in some areas, to return them to wilderness, to let the grass grow over the asphalt. The debate is ongoing, fierce, unresolved. But the road itself does not participate, it simply waits. It will accept whatever comes as it has always accepted whatever came. It was built by visionaries and laborers. It was used by tourists and scientists. It was loved and hated, praised and cursed. And it will continue to be all those things as long as it exists. Perhaps the road's greatest lesson is that nothing is permanent, not even a road that was built to last 100 years. The road will eventually crumble, be repaved, maybe be relocated. It will change just as the park changes, just as the climate changes, just as we change. The road is a teacher, and its lesson is humility. It reminds us that our plans, our visions, our grand designs are all subject to the slow, patient forces of time. Chittenden's road is not Chittenden's anymore. It belongs to the park, to the people, to the animals, to the weather. It belongs to the story. So drive the road that changed Yellowstone forever. Let the road take you where it wants to go. Let it show you the geysers and the valleys, the bears and the wolves, the families and the rangers. Let it show you yourself, reflected in its curves and cracks. And when you come to the end of the road, when you reach the exit gate and the asphalt gives way to the highway, remember that the road does not end there. It continues in your memory, in your heart, in your stories. It continues in the lives of everyone who has traveled it and everyone who will travel it. The road is forever because the road is a story. And stories never truly end. They just wait for the next traveler to pick up the thread, to drive, to remember, to change. The road that changed Yellowstone forever is waiting for you. Turn the key, take the wheel, begin the journey.